Indians are going abroad more than ever. The boom, in fact, in overseas travel has led to foreign currency spends by Indians jumping $7.5 billion to a record of $27.1 billion in financial year 23. Almost 90% additional spending under RBI's liberalized remittance scheme came from foreign travel alone. Looking at the RBI data, foreign currency spendings were about at $19.6 billion in financial year 22, about $12.7 billion in financial year 21, which was relatively lower amid travel restraints during the pandemic. Until financial year 2018, Indians were on average spending less than $1 billion every month. Now they're spending close to $27 billion annually. Those are big figures. Joining us at this point in time is Manan Bajoria, who's the Group VP Growth of ixigo. Also with me is my colleague Kartik. Kartik, a lot of boom in travel, quite on the expected lines. And what is surprising is the most remittance under LRS is coming from travel alone.
And I'm a little surprised, Shweta, looking at these numbers because, the estimation was that the total forex spend from India internationally would be about $24 billion, and it was estimated that 50% of that is actually going to be travel, tourism, credit card spends, etc. Right? But the number is 27 billion, right, which is a good 3 billion more than what was estimated. And yeah, I think these were the numbers, and this was the data that maybe the government was toying with when the LRS was introduced, and the idea then being that hey, it might be a good idea to actually get some tax collected here. Now, thankfully, the 20% law sort of got done away with, but we are still perhaps looking at about 5% TCS. But yeah, the trend is clear actually, because
up to 7
this
lakh?
is pent up. Yeah, exactly, up to 7 lakh. Now, the trend in foreign travel is clear. I think this is both a pent up demand, which during COVID and the fact that flights were grounded, travel was completely a no-no, and visa etc. was a problem, COVID testing was mandatory. So these are all issues that existed, and this is pent-up demand and revenge travel that one saw and continues to see. But in addition to that, I think it also speaks greatly about the fact that that Indians have the disposable income now to be spending this kind of money on traveling abroad.
Okay.
So yeah, so these are interesting data points to really make sense of collectively with the travel industry, with airlines, and we've seen even in domestic travel, domestic airlines are reaching record number of flyers month after month. The queues at airports, despite tickets being so expensive, are getting longer by the day, and so is the case internationally as well.
Okay, before we go to Manan, we are trying to patch him through. Two interesting data points or developments that have happened in the past week that we tracked very closely. One was with respect to TCS on credit card spends. Other was TCS on foreign tours and travel packages.
That's right.
Now, TCS on credit card spends, there is now a limit of up to 7 lakh. If you spend beyond that, you will attract a 20% TCS. Those were the developments as of yesterday.
Right. That's right.
But the TCS on foreign tours and travel packages continues to be at 20%.
That's right.
It was at 5, jumped to 20%.
That's right.
And people are worried in industry.
It's at 5% until 1st of July.
Until
from
1st July, it's 20%.
That's
so
right.
people are worried in industry because that's a substantial chunk of money, which essentially means, and I don't think there is a limit to that, there is no ceiling to it, which means if I was spending 1 lakh,
you're still paying 1,20,000 rupees.
I'm paying 1,20,000 rupee, and we can go and we can corroborate that with our taxes and maybe get our taxes back, but that's going to be a 1-year-long affair. Essentially, it is going to hinder people's ability to travel.
Absolutely, and my whole sort of issue with even the travel and tours sector being taxed at 20%, why is that? Even if you want to do that, I mean, assume there is some logic and rationality in that 20% tax TCS, why is that restricted to foreign travel alone? Tour packages can be booked for domestic travel as well. You have the same agencies, you have the same people. There is no guarantee, so to speak, that the tax evaders are the guys who are spending money, and perhaps spending cash on travel and tour to travel only abroad. They could well be spending the
within
same amount
this
of money
country.
to travel to Goa, to travel to Coorg, to travel to Leh,
So it's
Ladakh,
not then
Manali,
wrong to
anywhere.
assume
Right.
that the government only wants to tax foreign travel.
That is what it seems to be. Right.
And maybe sort of act as a deterrent to foreign travel while promoting, of course, traveling within India.
Oh yeah, I think the two are not mutually exclusive. You know, you could promote Indian tourism in any case. You really don't need to penalize international travel. Rather, you need to incentivize domestic travel. And incentives are not always monetary. To my mind, incentives and the nudges work much better if the social sort of structure around travel is worked upon, improved. Begins straight from infrastructure, flight connectivity, roads, no potholes, cleanliness, enough options, private investments made into the hospitality sector, food. You know, there are multiple souvenir shops. I mean, you know, I discuss this often. If somebody, and you know, a cousin or a friend traveling from abroad coming into India, and like the case is
bring
usually,
you souvenirs.
Yeah, where do you get souvenirs?
Right.
You go to Red Fort, you go to India Gate, you go to you know, anywhere, you go to Khan Market for that matter. You travel anywhere in Delhi, Mumbai, except for the airport, where there are these private stores which have come up which really jack up prices on shot glasses and fridge magnets. There is no way in India that you can actually get an India or a New Delhi you know, a Kali Pili taxi in Bombay or a green and yellow auto rickshaw in Delhi.
Right.
You can't buy those souvenirs on the streets in India. And that is the overall development that needs to be done to nudge and incentivize international and domestic travel within India than restricting people to travel abroad.
Absolutely. Manan joining us at this point in time. Manan, appreciate you taking time out. We understand that the entire industry is currently struggling with the announcement of TCS on credit card and TCS on travel tours booking overseas and overseas travel booking, and that is going to be a major jolt, as we understand, to the entire sector. What exactly are your concerns?
Yeah, I think over the latest ruling that the government has exempted till 7 lakhs, right? I think that brings in a lot of relief for a majority of customers out there, where they might.
But Manan, that 7 lakh, sorry to cut you short, Manan, that 7 lakh rupees valid for credit card spends abroad. But any travel and tour package to be booked from India, our understanding states that there is going to be a TCS imposed on that, 5% until 30th of June and 20% 1st July onwards. Is that right, or has the industry picked up some other signals?
Yeah,
I'm talking about travel and tour booking.
Exactly, that's the current interpretation that is there. Fortunately for us, we don't have tours and packages with ixigo right now. So we are not that much impacted by this. People can still go ahead and book their tickets without any, and pay via credit card and debit card, right? Without much impact, as long as you are within the ceiling limits that are there. So from that perspective, definitely. But yeah, from a government standpoint, I think it's really not clear, right? Like, why is it that 20% is actually needed? For if tax evasion is basically the purpose, then even 5% is enough, right? Because the tax is anyways getting deducted. So I think that's definitely a bummer for the travel and tourism industry, especially with the demand that we are seeing, right? With the upcoming summer vacation season.
Can I then, if you may permit, does it mean that it's going to be beneficial to you because people are going to less likely to take to travel packages and are more likely to book their travel independently?
You could say that we are yet to see how many percentage of those users will eventually make that shift, right? Because there's a certain segment of users who is a DIY user, who is okay to manage and book everything on their own. They would search for the best deals, book flights, hotels independently, book activities independently, right? But there is a certain segment, and especially for complicated tours like Europe, USA, etc., where people do look for packages which cover everything, right? They don't need to worry. They want Indian food. And that's where the group tours like SOTCs and Thomas Cooks of the world will really help. That certain segment would still be there, but I do think there might be a small shift in people who would want to now go more independently if they can just do their own research and make their own bookings.
All
So,
right.
Manan, what is prompting this trend that we've seen? $27 billion spent on international travel seems like a fairly sizable chunk of the economy and the citizens taking on to overseas travel. And this is something new. This is not something that we have seen previously. So, of course, if there was pent up demand, the pent up demand also, there was a full 1 year where COVID had ebbed down considerably. So, what are the drivers that you see when you speak to your customers or your sales teams which are out in the market interacting with clients? What is it which is driving Indians to take on to overseas travel so significantly right now?
Yeah, so I think in last year during the summer vacation season, we were still coming out of the third wave, right? There was still hesitancy in users' mind whether they should travel, whether there'll be a fourth wave, etc. But I think now people have realized that it's sort of part and parcel, and everyone is basically in that and FOMO mode out there. And last time we also had a lot of issues with respect to visas, right? There were tremendous wait times, and I think that's again repeating for some of the few countries in Europe this time again. There were issues last time. The inventory had also not really scaled up post-COVID, especially on the international side last year. But this year, the inventory has also increased. More airlines have launched routes, right? So all of that is definitely contributing. And we are at ixigo seeing a lot more demand for Southeast Asian countries like Singapore, Thailand, Indonesia, Bali, etc. Right? Because these are still comparatively cheaper versus the likes of Europe and US.
Okay. I also want to understand, as Kartik pointed out, these are significant numbers, and I'm sure you've enjoyed a share of the pie yourself. How do you see this panning forward? Do you think the coming financial year, starting April this year, is going to be better than last year, or the pent-up demand has been met and people now want to sit at homes?
No, I think the momentum has just begun. We are seeing a tremendous growth both on the domestic as well as on the international side when it comes to flights and hotel bookings. So I think it's only going to get better. We have the upcoming summer vacations have just started in Northern India, right? So the next
So
2 months,
what sort of traction are you looking at during the upcoming summer vacation? What sort of inquiries are you
uh,
looking at?
So our inquiries for example, if I look at year-on-year comparison, they are up almost 30 to 40% for key domestic destinations as well as international destinations. So that's sort of an uptick that we are seeing. We are hitting all-time highs when it comes to our bookings, and they're growing very well. The domestic market has fully recovered. In fact, it's now much more than the pre-COVID. We are touching almost 4.3 lakh packs, right? There has been a slight dip due to all the Go First issues. But yeah, barring that, I think the market has recovered fantastically. And I see with upcoming travel, and then there's festive season that will start from September onwards, this FY is going to be bumper for travel.
And Manan, I'm really curious to ask you, where are you right now at this point? There's a beautiful Swiss Alps in the backdrop, and is that a virtual backdrop or are you there for real?
No. That's unfortunately a virtual background.
Oh no.
I'm still at my,
Okay.
I'm
And
still in
I
Gurgaon, but yeah.
Okay, Manan, I have to ask you, which are the top destinations people are looking at this point in time? Is the trend,
Uh,
does the trend continue, or has there been a significant shift post-COVID?
No, I think the trend is definitely there, and the trend is in fact geared towards more, like I mentioned, Southeast Asian countries. So you have Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand, Indonesia, Vietnam is picking up very, very well, and we are seeing. I think we saw almost 100% increase in queries for Vietnam, right? And it's super cheap. You get great hotels at very affordable prices. And there's of course Europe and US, right? So obviously visas, etc., are still a challenge when it comes to Europe and US. But year on year, there's definitely a uptick that we are seeing. And in Europe, countries like Switzerland, you have France and Germany, where we are seeing good uptick.
Of course, you know, price is one point that Indian travelers are very, very cognizant of, and it is definitely, you know, we are a price sensitive country and a price sensitive population. But there have been certain exotic travel destinations and adventure tourism which has also seen a little bit of surge. So are people still engaging in, let's say, you know, activities like bungee jumping, etc., going abroad? Or are these more domesticated sort of family of 3 or 4 traveling together? Do you see group travel, adventure sports, exotic holidays also making it to the mix, or is it largely contained to family vacation?
So we are still seeing majority of it is family vacations. Though there are some pockets where we are seeing, let's say, spikes for queries for Maldives, Mauritius, right? So some exotic locations and Seychelles, for example, right? There's some bit of spikes for that as well. Not sure about the bungee jumping or other adventurous activity aspect since we don't deal with activities at all.
Okay.
But yeah, there is definitely, primarily it's family vacations with some segments for exotic locations.
And what about business travel internationally? Has that kicked off, or have Zoom and Google Meet sort of eaten away that pie of the business?
I think that's definitely been eaten away by Zoom and Google Meet. Domestic, definitely on the business side, has picked up. But international, it is still, while it's better than last year, but it's still lesser than what it was there pre-COVID. And especially with a lot of companies out there in that cost-cutting mode and cash conservation mode right now, international travel is still sort of restricted on the business side of things.
All right, Manan, appreciate you taking time out. That's an interesting story there. More and more Indians taking to skies, flying abroad, and the government making sure to get a fair share of the revenues that it is able to prop up from people who are traveling outside more than ever. Pent-up demand has been met, but Indians are not to be towed down. They are going, Kartik, like never before, spending as much as $27 billion. That's a huge chunk of the money. Government, of course, trying to get its pie of whatever it can in terms of tax, and taxes of course is an important story. Tax on both credit cards as well as foreign tours and travel packages. The impact that it's going to have will only come up after 1st of July, which is the date on which it will be implemented.